Thank you, everyone from around the world, for joining us today for HRCAP's 2026 Go ACE Global Online AI Career Expo expert sessions. As part of the 2026 Go ACE event, HRCAP has invited selected industry leaders, innovators, and subject matter experts to share practical insights, industry expertise, and real world experiences with our global audience. Each session is designed to connect expert perspectives with the needs of global professionals, emerging talents, higher organizations, and business leaders, helping them stay informed, develop relevant skills, and make better career and business decisions. We are very excited to have Derek with us for today's session. As a senior project manager at Intralink, Derek will lead starting and building a career in Korea, a guide for foreigners, sharing practical insights on navigating Korea's unique business environment and building a successful global career. From understanding workplace culture and expanding your professional network, Derek will provide valuable strategies for international professionals looking to grow their careers in Korea. We have collected several pre-submitted questions from our audience, and we'll have a brief Q&A session following Derek's presentation. If you have any questions during this session, please feel free to leave them in the chat, and we'll do our best to address them. So with that being said, Derek, thank you for joining us today, and please take it away.
All right. Thank you for the introduction. So as you said, I'm going to be talking about how foreign professionals can break into the Korean job market today. So I'm going to start off with a bit more about my career story, then a little bit about practical concerns and how they affect how you should hunt for a job, how to create your value proposition, and then how to get your foot in the door so you can get your career started in Korea. So a little bit more about me. I'm 39 years old. I'm American. I'm originally from Minnesota. I'm currently a senior project manager at a company called Intralink Korea, which I'll talk a little bit about more later. And I've been living in Korea for a total of almost 17 years now. So I'm going to get in a little bit more about my story in Korea. But the picture in the background is important because one of my big hobbies is bicycle racing. I did that very, very seriously starting in middle school. I raced through high school and college and as an amateur in Korea. And it actually ties into my career quite a bit. So that's why I put that image up there. A lot of people are curious how I ended up in Korea as a guy from Minnesota. So when I was young in elementary school, I went with my family to a YMCA summer camp in northern Minnesota. We went every year and would spend a week there. I really, really liked going there. So I decided I wanted to be a counselor there. So the summer after my freshman year of college, I spent the summer at this YMCA camp in Minnesota. Each week we'd have different groups of people come and we'd do hiking, canoeing, campfires, all kinds of different outdoor activities with them. And one week in July, all of a sudden the camp director we were having our weekly meeting and the camp director said, "Oh, this week we have a team from Korea coming," which we didn't normally get international guests. It was usually people from from Minnesota or maybe some other states. And the camp director said, "Would anybody like to be in charge of them for the week? And we have to take them on a one night overnight camp out." And I raised my hand and said, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. I'd like to help and do that." So I spent the week kind of in charge of the group from Korea. And I took them on a one night canoe trip where we canoed across a lake, set up tents, and we actually cooked food they brought from Korea over the campfire. And I really had a good time with the kids. And there were two leaders that had come they were from a summer camp in Korea, and this was one of their programs to bring a group to the US every year. And I was talking to them about their summer camp, and they said that every year they usually invite a foreign counselor to come over, and they would like to invite me to come over the next summer and teach them sort of about American style camping, they called it. So what we had been doing there, camping out in tents and cooking over a campfire and things like that. So I thought that sounded like a really cool opportunity. And so I told them that I would like to go. So in the summer of 2007, I flew over to Korea and I worked at their summer camp for 2.5 months in June, July, and August. And I lived with the family that ran the camp, which was two college professors who were basically professors of social work and counseling. And they kind of used the camp as something to develop programming and content in Korea about how the outdoors could be used for counseling and for social work and to help kids develop. So, little to say, I really, really enjoyed my time at that summer camp. I met a lot of really cool other college age people who were working there, and the family I lived with was also really great. So, I decided that I really liked Korea, and I wanted to try to figure out a way to come back and start my career there. So, in 2007, though, I was still just a sophomore in college at Purdue University in Indiana. And so I had 2 more years before I graduated. I knew I had to do that. And I was also still pursuing cycling at a high level. So anyway, I went back to Purdue, went back to my studying, studied 2 more years, continued bicycle racing, and finished up my major. Graduated in spring of 2009. And then I realized, okay, I still really want to go back to Korea. It had always been in the back of my mind. So I wanted to be a professional bike racer actually, but I didn't have quite a high enough level to do that. So I decided, okay, I'll go teach English in Korea. Um, and I'll bicycle race for fun and I'll try to learn Korean and see what kind of career I can make for myself there. So I thought that teaching English might be a good way just to get my foot in the door a bit in Korea. And I like children, so I thought that it would be fun. At the time, in 2009, there was basically one foreign English teacher at every elementary, middle school, and high school in Korea. And they're paid by the government. And you had a Korean, what they called a co-teacher who would help you out. So I thought that seemed like a good way to get started and get over to Korea. So I got a job at an elementary school called Yangji Elementary School, which is about an hour outside of Seoul. And it was a rural area, but it had its own ski resort. So I was really into skiing as well as cycling. And I thought it'd be fun to live near a ski resort and be able to go every day. So while I taught English, I also studied Korean in the evenings at a local university called Kyunghee University in Suwon. And I was able to learn Korean really fast. So that was something special about me that I didn't know I had the skill to learn language quickly. But when I took Korean classes after work, there was like about 10 other people with me. And after 3 months, I could sort of start to speak Korean, whereas the other people hadn't really learned much. So I think I was lucky to have that talent. The other way I developed my Korean ability when I was teaching English was I continued my bicycle racing hobby. And so I was on a local club in Yongin and I was on a racing team nearby. And we would travel probably twice a month to races around Korea. And so that gave me a lot of time with guys who wanted to spend time with me as a good cyclist and who I wanted to spend time with because I wanted to race and get to know more Korean cyclists. And so most of them, though, they didn't speak English at all. So it was a good opportunity for me to really work on my Korean in a forced setting that helped me improve my Korean a lot, which I thought would help me later. So I taught English for 3 years, and after the first year, I realized I didn't want to teach English forever, but I was thinking about how could I transition my career from teaching English to something else. So during the second year, I tried to do some networking, ask around about other kinds of jobs. There wasn't really many opportunities opening up. Everybody thought teaching English was a great job, and why would I want to quit that? And eventually, I met somebody who had done his MBA and was working at a Korean company, and that inspired me to do my MBA. That person told me that, oh, if you do an MBA and you get a job at a Korean company, they'll like having somebody who's American but can speak Korean to help them basically interpret American culture where they're trying to do so much sales and other activities. So I thought, okay, I'll do my MBA as well. The second and third year that I was teaching English, I used my preparation time and some time in the afternoons to study for the GMAT and prepare all my applications for my MBA. And I ended up going to a program called SKKGSB. That stands for Graduate School of Business at Sungkyunkwan University. And that school, which is in Seoul, has a joint dual degree global MBA program that I spent 2 years studying full time at with the goal of then getting a job at a Korean conglomerate. While I was studying my MBA, I got an internship at Doosan Heavy Industries and Construction, which is now called Doosan Enerbility. It's a company that builds power plants, and I was on the team that built desalination water treatment plants. So what that is they take ocean water and make it into drinking water by making a huge facility that takes all the salt out of the water through different processes. And I actually got this job. I was doing sales for them overseas, meaning finding new opportunities through my cycling network. So because I was bike racing with my team, I met a lot of different types of people And one of those people was able to help me get an internship at Tucson. And then from there, I was able to work my way through the company and turned it into a full-time role when I graduated from my MBA in Indiana. So in my summer there, went to Indiana, graduated, and then came back to work at Tucson full time. I spent 3 years there, which was all really interesting, and I learned a lot about Korean corporate culture, which would help me a lot later in my career. I also was able to learn a lot there just about how to structure thinking. Tucson is a huge Korean conglomerate, and they spend a lot of time training the new employees about how to structure their ideas and how to present them in a logical way to their superiors, which I found that a lot of smaller companies don't have the time or resources to do this. I've been able to use what I learned at Tucson in all the other companies in my career. Um, so I'm talking a bit about how I developed my career and how I got each job. So that was through networking. The next job was at Descent Korea, which is a sports fashion company. So they also make ski gear and bike gear. I'd been aware of that company for a long time, and it's a really hot sports fashion brand in Korea. And I was not actively looking for a new job at the time, but my friends all knew that I was, a career-minded person and was interested in opportunities, and that I was a big cyclist and, skier. And one of my friends was looking at a Facebook page for foreigners, and somebody from that company had actually posted that the company wanted to hire a foreigner who spoke Korean, who had already worked at a Korean company to help them expand their business abroad. He recommended that I apply. I applied and got it. And now I want to say with that story is my friends, I always made sure that they were aware of my career situation and they were aware of my goals and what I wanted to be doing with my career. So when that buddy of mine saw that post on Facebook, he immediately thought of me and sent it to me. I think it's a useful strategy for not just looking for a job in Korea, anywhere, to make your network aware of what your goals are and what you'd like to be doing so that they can actively help you or send you information if they see job opportunities that maybe you didn't see. After spending 3 years at Descent, I thought that I might like to try my hand at some startups because in starting about 8 years ago, the startup scene in Korea really started getting bigger. And so a lot of the startups were also making new technologies that they wanted to sell abroad. So I thought it might be interesting if I joined a startup and tried to help them do business development abroad. I actually ended up with the third job in my career at Sherpa Space through somebody I met at Doosan. The founder of Sherpa Space was actually a person I worked with to help develop and sell new technologies for water treatment when I was at Doosan. When I was there, he left the company and said, "Bye, everybody. I'm making a startup." We kept in touch through Facebook. He was actually in a different city, but I kept looking and liking his posts, seeing what he was up to. And then when I thought I wanted to join a startup, I actually just reached out to him, said, "Oh, hey, how's your company doing?" And he reached back and said, "Oh, wow, are you interested in working for me? I'd love to hire you because we have a new technology that we'd really like to start selling abroad. I think you'd be the perfect person to help me do that." So the moral of this story that you guys can implement for your own career searches is it's important to keep in touch with people from your old jobs. And as social media is probably one of the easiest ways to do that. So I encourage you to keep updated Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn accounts so that you can keep up with your old networks. So even if you don't necessarily talk to these people, if you see that they're doing something interesting and you've been updating your stuff, you'll be able to reach out to them through social media and get back in touch easily. And that can lead to all kinds of opportunities. So while I was at Sherpa Space, I spent almost 3 years there. This company was actually in another city in Korea, about 2 hours from Seoul. I had gotten married and my wife was pregnant, but she was still living in Seoul. So we were spending only the weekends together, and I had started thinking about trying to find a job in Seoul again. And I told my friends in my network, I go, "Hey, if any of you know of any jobs, let me know." And I was looking on LinkedIn a little bit and things like that. But again, the job at Intralink Korea was actually found by a friend of mine. So he saw that they were hiring, and we actually had a mutual friend who was working there. So my friend sent me that link and said, "Hey, this looks like the perfect opportunity for you." And he was right. I applied, reached out to our mutual contact there, and was able to get that job, then moved back up to Seoul before my first son was born. So the timing worked out really well. So I'll go into a little bit more about these strategies and how you guys can implement them yourselves. But first, I just want to talk a little bit about the company I work for, Intralink. I really like my job at Intralink, and it's a global company with offices in the US, UK, Europe, China, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia. What we do is we help foreign startup companies enter Asian markets or other markets abroad. And so right now, what I'm doing is I currently help two battery technology companies do business development or sales into Korea. So I carry their business card and I reach out to battery production companies on their behalf, introduce their technology, and help get tests and other partnerships up and running. So typically, what I did in my career was helping Korean companies go abroad. Intralink is the opposite. It's actually helping foreign companies come to Korea, and that really uses my Korean language skills. I've also have a side career of being doing a bunch of TV and modeling through cycling. And this all came about basically through having an active social media presence. I was able to be found for one TV show. After being on one show, people continuously reached out to me and I'm now on shows probably every 3 to 6 months. It's just a side, kind of a side fun thing I do. And the cycling modeling stuff has come because I was active in cycling and made a big network of local cyclists in Korea. So now I've heard that this group is mostly people who are in the US right now who want to come to Korea and work. So I want to give you guys tips that you can implement from my story. But in order to like think clearly about getting a job in Korea, you need to understand the situation. So if your situation is like mine, where you're just an American and you need a work visa, you'll probably need what's called the E7 visa, which companies have to sponsor. And to do that, they actually have to prove to the Korean government that you can do something that that they have not been able to find a Korean who can do. So when I got my E7 sponsored at Tucson, they applied with the basically logic to the government. Derek speaks Korean and he's an American. He can help us, but because he has these special skills, do sales abroad. So I was on the international business development team there. So when you are thinking about jobs that might be able to sponsor a visa for you, you also need to think like, oh, what can I do here that would be totally special about me so that the company can actually sponsor my visa? Then I listed some of the other types of visas on here. Getting a visa to teach English is another option if you're open to that. So what does this mean for you about this visa situation? It means that as a foreigner who wants to come to Korea, you need to create your own value proposition. Think about what can I offer to a Korean company that would be totally unique, me as a unique person. So this doesn't have to be the same as me. Not everybody speaks Korean, but everybody has different skills. And a lot of Korean companies will value those skills, but you need to be able to show them and explain it yourself. So one of the things that you do if you do an MBA is you make a 30-second elevator pitch. And that's useful to continue throughout your career. Always having your own 30-second value pitch of who am I, what can I do, and how does that help companies? So to make a value proposition for yourself that would be useful for Korean companies, you need to think about what Korean companies might need. And if you look at the Korean economy, most of it is there's Korean companies that make things for sale abroad. That's a big part of their economy. So Samsung makes cell phones, TVs, computers, all kinds of things. And most of their revenue is not from Korea, it's from abroad. So they need people who are foreigners, or they might need people who are foreigners to help them sell and market their products more successfully. So I typically recommend to foreigners who want to get business for their jobs in Korea, maybe the first thing you can propose to a Korean company is helping with marketing or sales back to your home country or region. So many Korean companies are global. They want to market and sell their products all over the world, and they're looking for people to help them do that, but they don't necessarily know where to find them. So my pitch over the year, my value proposition over the year for myself when I was doing my MBA was as a American guy who can speak Korean and understands Korean culture really well, I can help Korean companies more effectively sell their products abroad. So that was my pitch for the first 3 companies that I worked for. But now my pitch is different. I can help foreign companies come into Korea better because I speak Korean and I know what the Korean companies are really saying. So when a foreign business wants to come into Korea for the first time, I can help them find partnerships quickly and interpret what those partners are saying, even if the conversation's in English, by using my deep cultural background. So it's okay for your value proposition to evolve over time or even have multiple value propositions. But I think it's important to think about this before you start your job search so that you can figure out what kind of targets you might want to, that might make sense for you. A lot of people who I met who did their MBA in Korea or wanted to get jobs pitched to me the idea saying, "Oh, why not work for like a multinational or an American company that's in Korea? Because then maybe they'll have more employees who speak English, and it might be easier to fit in culture wise." So my advice on that is that typically most of the foreign companies that are in Korea are doing only sales and marketing in Korea. So they actually don't really need foreigners because all the activities they do basically require like perfect Korean to be able to do them effectively. Their employees are Koreans who grew up in Korea who can speak English to communicate with their headquarters and then do effective marketing and sales activities in Korea. So there's typically not a lot of job opportunities, I would say, for foreigners at multinationals in Korea versus job opportunities at Korean companies. That's just my 2 cents on that topic if you're thinking about where to look for jobs. So the next thing that's important to consider is how do you get your foot in the door? There's not exactly tons of jobs posted on LinkedIn or other websites. So I've made two scenarios here. One is for somebody already in Korea, and the other is for somebody out of Korea. So if you're somebody already in Korea, I think it's a lot easier to get a job. So my first recommendation for everybody is if you can figure out a way to bring yourself to Korea, either to study, to teach English, or to visit or do a working holiday, then that'll help you because you can be on the ground networking in person, which is a lot more effective than trying to do it online. But for this, the first step is to think about your value proposition and your 30-second elevator pitch. What is it that I could do that's special for a Korean company? And the next thing is to attend in-person networking events, job fairs, and actively use LinkedIn. So there are more and more jobs posted by Korean companies and especially startups on LinkedIn. And most of them, I think they're more, if they post there, are open to foreigners applying. So LinkedIn is a good place to start. There's a lot of Korean job websites as well. But I think that typically if a job is posted on a totally Korean job website, they're really not looking for foreigners. So LinkedIn is probably a better place to focus your energy. The next two steps are that you should tell your network about your job goals so that your friends can also help look for your friends and family. If they don't know what you want to be doing, they can't help you. But if you tell your network about what you want to be doing, then they can help you. And finally, if you're a student at a university, you should definitely visit your school's career center for a counseling session at least a couple times. For example, I gave a lecture at Hanyang University about how to get a job in Korea recently. And 1 week before, they had actually had a job fair at Hanyang, and none of the students had attended. So I think they weren't basically getting engaged with their school's career center because they didn't know their school had had a job fair for foreigners the week before. So my advice for you guys is even if you don't think it'll be that useful, try to engage with your school career center, at least look at their website, and at least once every semester, try to reach out for counseling or visit them to see if they can help. So for people who are outside of Korea, my recommendations are still similar, but a little bit different. You need to start with creating your value proposition, and then you need to try to take advantage of online resources like LinkedIn as much as possible to create whatever network you can, adding different kinds of people on LinkedIn who are in Korea, messaging them, things like that. And the other recommendation I have is if you have the time and money, visiting Korea to attend job fairs would be a really useful thing to do because then you can learn more about the opportunities that are available and get your face in front of people. The other thing that I think is good to do is if you really want to come to Korea and you're American and have a 4-year college degree, you can teach English relatively easily. So you should think about coming to teach English and then use that time to network and try to work your way into a different kind of professional job. Because physical presence in Korea will really open up a lot more opportunities than sticking with your career at home. So the other idea, other than teaching English, is considering doing a master's degree or coming over to study Korean because then you can get both a visa to come and then you have time to learn about the culture and figure out a way to get a job here. And finally, if you want to look towards developing your career and really making a life in Korea, I think that it's important to consider learning Korean because learning the Korean language helps you understand not just language, but also their culture. It's a very top-down hierarchical culture. And when you learn Korean, you start to appreciate why it is that way. And then sort of the feeling people get when they speak in Korean to somebody older or younger because they change the way they speak based on age or hierarchy in a company. Of course, Korean also helps for getting a job. And then continuously network, even if you have a job, because you never know when your network will help bring you new job opportunities like mine did. Um, and then finally, even after you have a job, can communicate with your network, especially your friends. That's your best network, your real friends, about what your career goals are so that they can continuously help you. So I hope that this was helpful. I think it's been about 25 minutes now, and we have some Q&A. But um, yeah, I've been very, very happy with my career here in Korea for the past 15 years. And I know the feeling that you want to get a job in Korea, but it's not easy to get started. So I hope that this lecture and time will be helpful for a lot of you to be able to get started on your career journey here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Derek, for that insightful presentation and for equipping our audience with practical guidance on navigating Korea's business landscape, the overcoming culture barriers, and accelerating their global career journey. So we'll now move on to our Q&A session. We have received several questions from our audience in advance, and we'll begin with those. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to submit them with our admin, and we'll do our best to address them as many as time allows. So just to kick off the first question, I know that you did move jobs, right? So you had several different jobs in Korea relating to certain departments, but what was the most challenging part for you to seeking employment within Korea or just outside of the US in general?
So, getting the job at first as an English teacher was actually not very difficult. There's a lot of spots for being an English teacher. So that first job was relatively easy to get, I would say. But the moving from doing being an MBA student to that first job at Tucson, that was very difficult. So I think that the most difficult part was just being able to figure out where to find opportunities. One thing that's different about Korea and the US is Korean companies do things quite a bit on quite a bit later of a schedule than US companies. So when you do an MBA in the US, companies are recruiting interns in the fall for the summer. Korean companies recruit summer interns about 1 month before they want them. And they also do the same thing for jobs. So typically, if you want a job in Korea and you start interviewing, they'll want you there as soon as the interview process is done. So I was feeling a bit anxious actually before the summer internship. Like it was already April, I didn't have one, and I had tried to reach out, use my network and things, but people had told me, "Oh, you're way too early." And then there weren't any job postings anywhere. But then all of a sudden, come April, May, then job opportunities and internships for June started popping up. So I think just having patience is one thing.
Great, thank you. And the next one is there's a lot of foreign talent who want to come and work in Korea. So, but what are just some common mistakes you see that they may make and how they can avoid them?
I think like not having your value proposition nailed down properly is a big mistake a lot of people make. So, no matter what your background is, I think it's important to think like, okay, a Korean company, if they're going to sponsor my visa, they have to be saying that I'm doing something a Korean cannot be doing. So you need to be able to explain why you can do something special and why you'll be helpful. I think a lot of people maybe don't necessarily get a lot of chances to practice how to communicate that. So thinking about it on your own and then practicing with your friends or whoever, how to explain your value proposition is what helps open the door for most successful people versus people who have a harder time getting a job.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned in your presentation about the importance of the Korean language ability and also understanding, Korean culture. So, how big of an advantage is that for foreign talent when they actually do speak the language? Like, how I'm sure it'd be a huge jump versus another talent who doesn't, right?
Yes, learning Korean is very, very helpful. And even if you don't speak it perfectly or the people in your office speak English, it still helps to basically build rapport with people. So I think any level of Korean that you can develop will be useful.
Okay, perfect. Just several more. So you built your network based on cycling, right? So what other strategies would you recommend for building strong professional network or just finding hidden job opportunities in Korea for these job seekers?
So I think like having a hobby is a really good one. It doesn't have to be cycling, but basically having something you do outside of just work or school that you are passionate about that you can use to connect with other people. So even if it's cycling or hiking is a big thing in Korea, playing soccer with a group, etc., something that can build your network of real friends is the first thing you should think about. Going to church is another good option if you're religious. Being actively involved is another good way to build a network. And then, in addition to kind of hobby based networking, professional networking, now there's a lot more networking events in Korea and actual job fairs you can go to where you meet people and then you'll receive their business card and you can keep in touch with them. The other thing I think a lot of people maybe that's a little different in Korea versus maybe America is every year during basically Korean Chuseok, which is like Thanksgiving, and at Lunar New Year, Seollal, Koreans use that as an opportunity to greet almost everybody they know via text message. And so I think even if you've met somebody only a few times, those are great opportunities to kind of re-strengthen your network and basically just texting people on holidays saying, "Oh, hey, I hope you have a great holiday. How are you doing?"
Great. And just a final question. Looking back on your own career journey, what advice would you give your younger self when starting a career abroad?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say keep an open mind. And then I think what would have actually been useful for me, that would have been the ideal thing, is if I would have taught English, then done work in the US for 4 or 5 years, then come back to do my MBA. That maybe would have opened some other doors for me. Um, so I think like having a good mix of work experience, if you have some work experience in your home country, that's also very useful for getting a job in Korea.
Well, Derek, thank you once again for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights and experience with our global audience. If anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to submit them with our admin, and we'll do our best to address them as time allows. And we'd also like to thank everyone from around the world for participating in today's HR Cap 2026 Go ACE Global Online AI Career Expo expert session. We hope today's discussion has provided practical insights that will support your career growth, professional development, and future opportunities. And also, if you want to connect with Derek, we'll provide his LinkedIn in the description. So please make sure to connect with him, send him some messages, and if you have any questions, I know that he'll be more than happy to get back to you. And also, please continue to explore various opportunities, resources, and upcoming sessions available throughout the 2026 GoAce event. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you at our future GoAce expert sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.